Thank God for branding on my face now. Every day's another manic break.
A couple weeks ago, we made a tutorial on how to make a song like Brakence or other kind of hyperpop / anti-pop artists in that similar realm. And to be honest, that video was received extremely well. Like, we were surprised on the channel to see how well it did and how positive all of the comments were. But there was one overwhelming comment, and that was that people really wanted to see a follow-up video where we break down how to mix and produce vocals like Brakence or any of those other kind of hyperpop / anti-pop artists. So in this tutorial today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over mixing a couple different Brakence style vocals. So we're gonna look at how to get that really dry, warm, punchy upfront vocal. We're gonna look at how to do that kind of super high tuned, super high chopped kind of effect vocal that he does. And then I'm even going to show you guys how to do the falsetto vocal that he's stacking wide and leaving super loose. So we're going to look at how to mix and produce all of those vocals in this video today. But before we hop into Cubase and do that, my name is Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. We have weekly tutorials on music and music production on this channel. So if you like this tutorial, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Go check out all of the other tutorials we have because there are a ton. And then after this video, if you want to support the channel or if you want to grab anything to help your own productions, head over to our website, Make Pop Music. We have a bunch of free and paid content over there, including sample packs, preset packs, courses, MIDI packs, blog posts. We have a podcast. So go check that out after this tutorial. But let's dive into Cubase so we can break down how to actually mix and produce vocals like Brakence and other kind of anti-pop / hyperpop artists in a similar lane. Let's dive in. Let's start off with Brakence's kind of dry lead vocal. A lot of the time, he's not using a ton of reverb in his songs unless it's for a specific effect. So if you watch our channel, you know that I actually typically will mix vocals more wet than not. So let's go over how to actually mix a really punchy dry pop vocal because we don't do this a ton on the channel. So I'm going to turn everything off, including the sends. To start, I think it's really, really imperative, especially when you're trying to do something very dry and forward, that you have a really, really good source signal. So for this, we are using the Lewitt Audio LCT 1040, and then we're running that into a Heritage HA81A preamp. We're not using the EQ on that, and then that's going in through my Apollo Twin. And then that's just going straight into my DAW, and here is what it sounds like with literally no plugins on it whatsoever. This is completely dry. This is what we start with.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind, I always feel overcomplicated. I'm wage broken, I've tried every way of medicating. But this life...
So that's the raw vocal. I'm using the mic on the clear setting, I believe. And it's at about like 2 o'clock between FET and tube on the LCT 1040. So let's go ahead and start. I'm just gonna do some auto-tune. Same thing we always do on this channel. I'm just in F sharp minor, which is the key. I do have a little bit of formant because Brakence has a much deeper, kind of chestier voice than I do. So just to get us similarly there, I'm doing a little bit of formant control right here. And then we're getting this.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind, I always feel overcomplicated.
And then we're just hitting it with quite a bit of compression and EQ. So we're going to be using the virtual mix rack from Slate Digital. We're going to use the custom series EQ. We're adding a little bit of 10K. We're taking away a little bit of 2K. We're not doing anything to 600, and we turned off the low filter. I was kind of switching back and forth, and this is what I ended up with. We are doing some high pass at 200 because I don't want any of that mud. And then for some compression, we're using a kind of Blue Stripe 1176. And then we've got fast attack, extremely fast release. We'll see how much gain reduction we're getting.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind, I always...
So we got about 3 dB of gain reduction on this, and then we're going into a LA2A from the FG2A, and we've got about 3 dB of gain reduction on this. And I'm actually just using this to drive the signal a lot because it was so low, and this was already kind of pre-mixed from the last tutorial. So here's what we've got now.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind, I always feel complicated. I'm wage broken, I've tried every way.
And then typically after I do some compression, that's where I'll go in and do some EQ. So I'm just cleaning up some of these low mids because, again, I was pretty close to the mic and we want this vocal super dry and punchy. So we want to make sure we clean up some of this.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind.
And then some of this.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause...
And then other than that, we've got some dynamic EQ happening up here, doing something similar to like a de-esser where it will only kick in over a certain threshold. And it's just taking away a little bit of that 11K.
Always.
And then we're just scooping out a little bit of 3K. Here's with and without.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind, I always feel overcomplicated. I'm wage broken, I've tried every way of medicating. But this life...
So typically for these kind of Brakence, hyperpop, anti-pop style mixes, you're going to have such huge bass that you don't really need a lot of low end from your vocal, especially if you're working with a vocalist like Brakence who has such a deep, chesty voice. The next thing that I wanted to do was DS, because as we've taken away a little bit of that low end and compressed it, we're getting a little bit of that sibilance. So I've been using the Weiss de-esser quite a bit. I think I reviewed this on 5 of my favorite newer plugins. But these are the settings if you want to copy this. This is probably my favorite de-esser now to do quite a bit of gain reduction, because to me it just sounds really good. It's pretty kind of clean and natural. And I like that you've got your wide bands, you've got your split bands, and you've got your bandpass bands. So here's what it sounds like with this de-essing.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind I always feel overcomplicated. I'm way too broken, I've tried every way of medicating. But this life has never really seemed captivating.
And by having the dual bands, I have a band right here kind of controlling that TH and that more plosive sound. And then I have this one right here controlling that really bright sibilant, especially when you're using a really bright tube mic. The next thing that I like to do is just a little bit more compression. This is super specific for kind of hyperpop and anti-pop vocals. If I was just doing a normal vocal mix, I've already compressed this enough, and this was in the same kind of dynamic range. I don't even know if I'd need this, but I am using RVox to just give me a little bit of extra squish.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind I always feel overcomplicated. I'm way too broken, I've tried every way of medicating.
And then I've just got a little bit more EQ. So again, we're just controlling some of these low mids. And then a lot of this kind of like really nasally frequency for me personally. And then other than that, it's just controlling those kind of like low resonant tones in my voice. Since I don't have a really low voice, all of the lows and low mids for me tend to be just really peaky and resonant. They're not like really full and deep and luscious. So a lot of the time I cut those just so I don't have to bother with them in the mix. You can hear that even as I solo that in the mix, that band is so present. I just needed like a dB.5 of that out. And then I'm just cutting a little bit of low end because after all of that compression, it just started to boost some of the kind of like phantom low end that we had. Last, I'm just using RX de-esser. This is like a super easy throw it on last in the chain to catch any kind of final sibilant peaks. And then this is pretty much it for a dry vocal. We'll go to the sends here, but they're not doing much.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind I always feel overcomplicated. I'm way too broken, I've tried every...
Let's go to the sends real quick. They're not really doing much of anything. I've got this parallel widening right here that is just the chorus dimension D from Arturia.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind I always feel overcomplicated.
Let me drive it up so you can hear it.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind I always feel overcomplicated.
Just to give me a little bit of stereo width. And then we have a really, really short reverb, again, barely mixed in. We've talked about this a lot on the channel. This is just a Verb Suite short small Vox room. So from the BM7, 700 milliseconds, not doing too much at all. Just gives us a little bit of width and kind of pops it into the mix.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it.
You can barely hear it decay, but it kind of pokes it inside all of those guitars and all of those drums a little bit more, in my personal opinion. So that's pretty much it for that really dry, kind of punchy lead vocal like you would hear from Brakence. You're going to do some different EQ moves depending on the vocalist and the mic, but make sure you get a really good source signal. You're going to probably compress the hell out of these. And then other than that, just make sure you're controlling some of that sibilance, because you want it to be bright where it pokes out of a really dense mix, but you don't want it to be so sibilant that it really pierces the listener's ears. So here's what it sounds like in the mix.
I'm not built for love, I can never take it. Cause in my mind I always feel overcomplicated. I'm way too broken, I've tried every way of medicating.
So we're going to call that good. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is much more fun in my opinion. This is going to be the kind of hyperpop vocal. So let's go ahead and turn this off so you can hear what it sounds like when I tracked it.
Maybe I'm depressed, maybe I need motivation. I think all the stress causes all my complications.
So I'm tuning this one a lot harder. I'm using a lot more parallel widening, and I'm using a bit more short reverb. And what's important about this is I've heard Brakence and a lot of other hyperpop and anti-pop artists do this, is they will chop their vocals so quick after to remove things like breaths or background noise, and you almost get this like really weird gated sound so you can hear it.
Maybe I'm depressed, maybe I need motivation. I think all the stress causes all my complications. Cardiac arrest when I think...
And that's a really cool thing to do if you want your vocals to be perfectly on time, if you want them to even kind of duck out of the way of something like a kick. Instead of sidechaining them, you could legitimately just cut out kind of like phantom consonants, so you're not really needing to understand the word, but it just kind of adds a little bit of that kind of hyper-processed kind of electronic vibe that you're going to get in something like an anti-pop or a hyper-pop vocal. Other than that, same settings of auto-tune as before. We've actually got the same of everything until we get to throat. So here's what it sounds like without throat.
Maybe I'm depressed, maybe I need motivation. I think all the stress causes all my complications.
So it's the same as that dry punchy vocal. We've just got more of that parallel widening, so it is adding that chorusy effect, and we are cutting off those different consonants here and there. But other than that, this is really where we're going to get our cool effects. So this is using Throat by Antares. This comes in their bundle. If you've never used anything from Antares or Auto-Tune, I highly recommend this monthly subscription. We do have an affiliate code in the description below if you want to try it out, but this is one of the plugins that comes in that bundle that I am using all the time. So here are the settings if you want to copy. I'm pitching it up 12 semitones, which is 1 octave. I've got it set to alto, medium, glottal voice type, and medium throat precision. And then here are all of my settings. So I'm not really adding much breathiness. I'm doing a little bit of throat formatting with the length, and then I'm also doing some with the width. And so you can kind of hear how this changes.
Maybe I'm depressed, maybe I need motivation. I think all the stress causes all my complications. Cardiac arrest when I think of all the way.
And that's going to give that really kind of processed throat tuning. You could do something like this in Auto-Tune Pro. However, by having the length and the width controls, you get something that I find is just a little bit more precise, especially if you're having this be kind of a lead element. So a lot of the times I'll do format shifting on my background vocals just within Auto-Tune Pro. But if I want to go for something like this, or like in the Taylor Swift tutorial that we did for like the Midnight Rain vocal effect, I'm going to Throat by Antares. And these are the settings if you want to match them. And then other than that, we've just got our EQ with some slightly different moves. We're taking away quite a bit of these mids because it gets a little bit gnarly. And then the last couple things that we've got are digitalis. And we use this in the last Brakence tutorial for the actual instrumental. So I've got this on the Beneath the Rubble preset, and I've got the mix at 0. And what I'm doing is I'm driving it up on certain words and phrases to give us glitches within that vocal. And then I've got Decapitator to just add a little bit of saturation and kind of make it that hyper-processed kind of electronic vocal.
Maybe I'm depressed, maybe I need motivation. I think all the stress.
And let me show you what it sounds like when I'm dragging in that digitalis. So you can see right here, watch this mix knob. You can even see it right here on our automation lane. This is a really cool thing that Brakence and a lot of hyper pop artists will do. It's pop on these really creative effects and then have them bypassed and then just kind of fade them in for certain words and phrases. So we're just doing that by the mix knob on digitalis. And it's cool. It gives us a little bit of extra dimension, especially in the actual mix itself. So all of that with the super hard cutting between words, the throat shifting with Antares Throat, the saturation that we've got from Decapitator, the extra width from that vocal parallel widening, send, and then the digitalis that we're automating up gives us that really high kind of Brakence vocal that you would hear in something like 5G. And here's what that sounds like. Let's go on to the third Brakence vocal mix / vocal production technique that he uses a lot. And that is these really soft falsetto pre-choruses or bridges where he will double track the falsetto, but there's no center. So this is something that I really liked when I listened to Brakence for the first time. And I've heard other hyperpop artists do this. Like I've heard like Glaive will do this. I've heard, all kinds of people do this. And all you have to do is double track a melody. So I'm singing this falsetto line twice.
I've been trying to find somehow. Always know I just feel like hell. I've been searching for salvation in the wrong places.
And what I found with the Brakence style falsetto vocals is he's not really tuning his at all, and he's not time aligning them at all. They're a little pitchy, they're a little loose, and to me that gives you this really almost like eerie, intimate vibe. So we've got them double tracked. The left is panned 100% left, the right is panned 100% right. And then within that, it is the exact same chain as the dry vocal. We're just scooping away a little bit more top end with this last EQ. So you can see this right here. Other than that, everything is the same.
I've been trying to find somehow.
We need these just like super soft and warm, so we're going to just bandpass the top end off completely, and then we're taking away a bunch of mids and high mids. And that's just to kind of soften up that vocal. So with 2 falsetto vocals, same mixing settings, just panned out left and right, you get this really nice, warm, intimate setting that feels almost eerie because nothing's really tuned that well, nothing's time aligned that well. It's got almost this like ghostly vibe.
I've been trying to find somehow. Always know I just feel like hell. I've been searching for salvation in the wrong places.
And that is literally it. That's a really easy technique that you can lift from Brakence and other similar artists of instead of tracking a lead vocal and then panning it left and right, just double track it and pan it left and right, because as you pan things, you're still going to have a phantom center. So even if I was listening in mono, I'll still be able to hear this. Like if I swapped on a mono button, I don't know if this will turn it mono for you, but if I do it, let's pop it on here.
I've been trying to find somehow, always know I just feel like hell.
You can see that we're not losing our mono compatibility just because we don't have a center channel. It's just going to comp that down into the center, and then you're going to get that width on something like headphones or a car stereo or monitors. So try that technique when you're doing falsetto vocals, especially in like a bridge or a pre-chorus. It's really lovely. It adds this nice bit of intimacy. And then other than that, we are just going right into the chorus. We didn't talk about this one in the intro, but it is literally the exact same as the dry vocal, but we're adding a lot more sends. We're adding decapitator, and then we've got these really cool vocal throws that I'll show you with Clear Mountain Phases from Apogee and Crystalline from Baby Audio. So before those, let's just take a look. This is all the same, and I just sang it a little bit more gritty and a little bit more chesty.
Now I'm face down. I think I've abandoned all my faith now. Every day's another manic breakdown. I can feel.
So this is a pretty dense arrangement, and to get vocals to pop in a dense arrangement, sometimes I'll add something like decapitator on just to make sure that we can get a little bit of saturation to help that pop out. So here's what it sounds like even before we have any of these sends. This is with our dry lead vocal chain plus decapitator.
Now I'm face down. I think I've abandoned all my faith now. Every day's another manic breakdown. I can't feel my fingers anymore.
So it sounds pretty good. However, I think this is a little dry for a chorus, even for Brakence. So we've still got that parallel widening. We've still got that short reverb, but now we're going to add a slapback delay, a quarter note delay, and a longer reverb. So let's go look at all of these individually. So if we look at the slapback delay, we've talked about this on the channel quite a bit in the past. I'm just using repeater. I've got the CLA-ish tape slap with 100% wet. Here are my settings if you want to copy. It just adds a little bit of width. It's just adding a nice little bit of modulation. It's adding a nice little bit of width, and it just helps something kind of poke into that mix, similar to that short reverb that we talked about earlier. We've also got a quarter note delay with repeater. This is just kind of in my template. Quarter note spread is on setting A, which is going to give it kind of a chorusy wide setting. And then we've just got some filtering going on, but nothing super wild on this, your standard quarter note delay. And it just helps that have length. And then I've even got that sending to this long reverb as well. One thing that I will do with my delays and reverb sometimes is pop an EQ after the plugin that I want on the send. And that's just going to kind of filter that out so it doesn't get in the way of my lead vocal. And then other than that, we just have this long reverb right here, which is super simple. It's just Valhalla Vintage Verb, 1.72 decay on the concert hall setting. Here are all the settings. We've popped in a little bit of high end, but we're doing some cuts with the EQ. And it sounds like this. It's really simple, clean for all vocals. And then again, just kind of doing that Abbey Road technique of band passing low end, band passing high end. And everything sits really well in the mix. Let's hear this now with all of these different sends. And you can hear that it's a little bit more wet, but it still pops out in the mix as a dry lead vocal.
Now I'm face down. I think I've abandoned all my faith now. Every day's another manic breakdown. I can't feel my fingers anymore.
Now, let's pop on to this fun part. This is the last thing we're going to talk about in this tutorial, and then we will be done. You can see right here, we've got these little automation curves. So this is going to be for a phaser and for a reverb. Let's pop onto the phaser first. I've been using a lot of the Apogee plugins lately. I'm really enjoying them. Apogee makes insane interfaces already. I had the privilege of going to LA and doing the song that they used for their interface ad for the Boom. So I love the guys at Apogee. However, this is not sponsored or anything. I just really like this plugin, and it's something cool that I wanted to shout out. So I've got it on this stereo R&B Rode setting, and what I'm doing is I am just automating this mix up on certain phrases, and it gives us this really weird kind of vocal throw that I have heard Brakence do. I have heard Silk Sonic do it. We kind of did something similar on that, and here's what it sounds like.
Hate now, suffocating memories so fade out.
And it just kind of adds a nice little bit of width. It does that kind of like hyper pop, super processed vocal effect that you're going to hear a lot. I like it.
All I feel is misery and hate now.
spreads it out, gets it out of the way, kind of does this weird throw. And then when you can combine that with something like a reverb throw, it's money. So we're using Clear Mountain Phases for that phaser throw. And then we're going to be using Crystalline by Baby Audio for this reverb throw. So here are the settings I'm using, and I'm using Crystalline for this because there are a bunch of cool production kind of settings on this. This is not just something like Valhalla Vintage where it's just your nice kind of clean reverb. This has a bunch of cool kind of bells and whistles, and we're kind of using a lot of those. So we've got the size on Spacey. Sparkle is at 100, width is at 0, but that's still completely stereo wide. You can go all the way down to negative 100, which is mono, and you can boost this all the way to plus 100, which is like ultra wide. But we don't need that because we have the phaser. For the depth, we've just got this on high, modulation at 100, and then we've got a 4x shimmer on 4K hertz, which means that 4K and up is going to last 4 times longer than the rest of these. We do have a 2-bar decay, which is a really, really, really long reverb, and we have the reverse on. So this is a really cool technique. So we've got reverse pushed in. And then other than that, we're just doing some EQing with the band passing over here. But this trick really works because we've got a really, really, really long reverb with this reverse on. And so as I drive this up with that phaser that we've already got, it gives you this really almost like illusion-y big reverb throw on just certain words. And what we're doing is we are driving it up all the way, and then we're taking it down all the way. So it goes from completely dry without either of these effects to extremely wet, back to completely dry almost immediately. And that gives you this really weird, like, focused on the center for the vocal, and then it's kind of everywhere all at once.
All I feel is misery, hey now, suffocating memories, so fade out. Hairpin trigger finger blow my brains out. I can't seem to swallow anymore. I hope you don't find me on the floor.
And you can hear that with that reverse reverb on this last one.
I hope you don't find me on the floor.
It really reverses up, and it gives me a riser kind of into this post-chorus that we have. So using something like really creative reverb throws or delay throws or phaser throws is a really cool way to kind of get these hyperpop effects without having to have a million different tracks, because I'm baking all of these into my main vocal. So it's just that typical kind of dry Brakence vocal, a little bit more reverb and delay, a little bit of saturation, and then we've got that Clear Mountain Phases from Apogee and that Crystalline from Baby Audio, really doing these kind of spacey delay throws just on one word, and then they're completely dry. So here's one more example that I can show you.
Every day's another minute breakdown. I can't feel my fingers anymore. All I feel is misery, hey now, suffocating memories, so fade out.
And I'm using them in different intensities. So we do a really intense one for this first one, then we're doing these really light throws for these, and then we're doing a super, super intense one to lead us into this post-chorus.
I hope you don't find me on the floor.
And there are a bunch of different techniques and mixing styles and vocal production styles that Brakence will use in his songs and other anti-pop and hyperpop artists will use. So hopefully you found all of these informative. I know that the dry vocal seems really simple. It's really just about getting a good quality vocal and then just finessing with EQ, compression, and some de-essing. And then other than that, feel free to go absolutely crazy with a more kind of effects processed, high hyperpop vocal or the big delay throws. But hopefully you can use some of these in your kind of production style, even if you're not doing hyperpop or anti-pop. These are just really cool techniques and tools to actually tuck into your pocket and use in all kinds of subgenres. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, let us know in the comments down below. Please like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments down below what videos you want to see in the near future, because we are taking suggestions for upcoming content. And then other than that, again, if you want to support our channel, head over to makepopmusic.com where you can check out sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs. We have a start to finish production course, and we have a bunch of free content over there. So there's a whole tab of freebies where we have drum samples, presets, infographics, guides, all kinds of really, really cool stuff. So head over to makepopmusic.com for that. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And other than that, we will see you next week with much more content, but I hope you have an amazing week. Much love. Peace.